Eric Lovestrand.
He's still in conference, so he's here. But Jamie is here to answer any questions.
Y'all have any questions? All right. All right, we're gonna go to Captain Charlie Wood and Jim Estee from FWC. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Massey.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to come talk to you about oysters. We have a project that we'd like to initiate here the 1st of November, and we'd like to describe it to you and get your input on it, and also answer any questions because it's a little bit complicated. Let me first talk about what's going on as far as the oyster population in the bay. Okay, probably I'm too big to stand close to it. The condition of the bay, so in the east side of the bay, in East Hole and Cat Point, we have lots of little oysters. We have lots of spat. Things are looking good. We don't have lots of large ones, harvestable size oysters. In the west side of the bay, we have very little spat, very little small oysters, and very little large oysters, so it's not looking good in the west side of the bay. One of the problems that we've been having, I think because we don't have lots of harvestable oysters, is we have a lot of fishermen that are harvesting sub-legal size oysters, and this is a problem for two reasons. Number one, they don't get enough weight, so they don't really make enough money per oyster. But more importantly, what the bay is lacking right now is shell. And as I drove over the bridge today, I noticed a couple barges putting shell out. And so the biggest thing that's keeping us from the recovery of the bay, besides the water, and we're getting some water now, is enough shell out there. And so we need to make sure that we leave those small oysters out in the bay. And so here's what our proposal is. As it happened in 1985, 86, after the hurricane, we instituted check stations, and we're suggesting that we do the same thing here. And how this will work is, we only have a few people working in the west side of the bay over here. We have most of them working in the east side of the bay, so we propose to put 2 check stations in, one in East Point and one over here. And what the oystermen are going to have to do is they will have to go through the check station, have their officers check 1 or more bags of their oysters to make sure that they are only legal oysters, and then we're going to require that they be tagged and that only the dealers are allowed to purchase bags that have been tagged from Apalachicola Bay. We propose to do this from the November 1st until the 1st of April. We can't really extend it because we have time temperature issues, and it would not be fair to the fishermen to have to come in so early. Other part of the proposal is we talked about having the oystermen go through the check stations by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So is that enough details for y'all to ask questions and give input to us about what you think we should do, or questions about how we're doing it?
What time they gonna have to be out? I mean, you said they got to be in by 4.
They'll have to go through the check station by 4 o'clock.
What time the check station gonna close?
Pardon me?
What time do the check station close?
Theoretically, they will close at 4 o'clock, but if there's a big long line of folks, because the first few days, this is probably going to be kind of a chaos, and so we're going to have to work ourselves through it. We're not going to try to inconvenience anybody purposely. We'll try to do everybody right, but we want them to know that they need to be in by 4 so we can start processing them.
Okay. So that's the latest they can get in. What time they gonna open up?
Check station, probably about 10 o'clock, but if somebody wants to check in sooner than that, we'll find a way for them to check in if they have troubles with their boats or something.
Okay.
We'll find a way to do that.
I think it's a good idea. It's should have been there.
You're saying that the check stations will be operated by the FWC officers?
We'll have officers and we'll have a couple helpers that we're going to hire to run the check station. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
the last time we did this, you know, there was, I don't know, you hear all kinds of stuff, but some of it wasn't done by officers, it was done by other people, and some people get treated this way, and some people, I applaud you for using the officers to actually do that, because they are the law enforcement and govern what is taken out of our bay. And 2, I do applaud you for moving forward with the check stations. I'm assuming, and I'll ask you this question, but I'm assuming other than shutting the bay down, this is one way that you feel like we can help the bay recover And I applaud you for leaving the bay open so that, you know, people can go out and try to make a living. They just got to harvest legal oysters. And short of shutting the bay down, I understand that this is the only other mechanism that we could come up with to try to leave the bay open where people can make a living. And I applaud you for that also. And I know it works because, as you said, we did do it in 1985, and it's an inconvenience for everybody, and it may limit what dollars that they can make. But you know, we as leaders here should be looking at how we can help the bay to recover. I mean, the bay will recover, but we got to give it some help too. So I do applaud y'all for trying to do this, and hopefully it works so that we can allow the bay to stay open and allow the people to still continue to make a living, and as we have here for a number of years here in Franklin County. So I do applaud you for that.
Thank you, and this is a big deal for us, and we're bringing officers, I mean, although this is Franklin County, this is a statewide issue because Franklin County is so important, the oyster fishery here is so important. We are bringing officers from all over different parts of the state to beef up the staff while we do this.
And you know, people really don't realize, again, just real quick, people really don't realize the central role that an oyster plays in this bay. They are our water quality. They are our filter for this bay. And if you lose the oyster industry here in this bay, you're going to lose a lot of other different species, including your fish and your crabs and everything else, because they keep the bay clean. That's what an oyster does. It's a natural water purifier. So the key to keeping our bay and keeping it sustainable in a number of fisheries is the oyster. And a lot of people don't really sit down and think about it that way, but that's the way this ecosystem here in Franklin County works. And without those oysters, we're in trouble. So I applaud you for trying to take the effort to these efforts to maximize that and allow our bay to recover so that we can continue to have a clean bay. We can continue to eat the fish and the crabs out of this bay, and it all hinges on that oyster filtering our water. So again, I do applaud you for that.
And we appreciate the county commission's interest. We don't get this kind of interest everywhere we go. Thank you.
I've been sitting in the meetings with y'all as long as you go in. Where's your location going to be in East Point and one in Apalachicola, Mr. Woods?
The two locations that we're looking at on the west end of the bay would be at Lombardi's, down here at the offload site there. And the east site would be at the vessel ramp on Patton Drive. Right there would be the two locations we would have officers at, and the check station people as well. So they would be there. And as Commissioner Parrish commented on a few moments ago, there will be officers present, and they will be directing pretty much everything that's happening at that site. So they
If
will be
the
present.
bay is not being worked as hard on the west end at the time where y'all moved back the other one over to the east side?
It's very fluid, I'll say that, and we're starting big because as Mr. Estes spoke, we're getting back into something we did many years ago. So we're going back in history, trying to put our plans together, but we're going to be very fluid. If we need more people in East Point, we'll shift people in that direction to get them where they need to be so that we can keep the harvesters moving through the check stations, or vice versa. But from what we see now, Chairman Massey, it looks like the lion's share of our harvesters are on the east end of the bay.
Mr. Watson?
Have you had input from the oystermen as well?
Captain Wood and I met with the SMART group 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, and we talked to them about this, and they had some good input about some of the things we might consider. We also met earlier last week with some other oystermen to talk about the same thing. And so yes, sir, we've had a good bit of input from the oystermen.
Thank you.
We've been meeting for about a year, really. It's headed to this point.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
can
ma'am.
ask Captain Wood, I hate,
Yes,
me and Charlie's still a little boy, but, Captain Wood, would you mind going through what exactly happens at a check station? Because there's some people in here that never has experienced that, and what will be done and how it will be taken care of.
Sure. Basically, what we'll have are the two sites set up so we have some convenience for the harvesters. If they're on the west end of the bay, they won't have to transverse to the east side or vice versa. But basically, we will have officers present, and there will be check station attendants, we will call them. There'll be non-sworn employees that will be there. Basically, when a harvester finishes up his day, he will have to come through that check station. At that point in time, he will come in and dock alongside our vessel that is there and stationed there. And an officer will go down to where they're at, an officer will randomly pick one of the bags for it to be inspected. The harvester can set it on the gunnel. Our check station attendant will take it up to a sorting flat or box. It'll be dumped out. It will be looked at that point in time to see if they all look good. I'm very optimistic that we're going to have some very pretty oysters to look at. But if it looks as though we have a lot of small oysters in it, those oysters will then be put back into the bag, moved to the side for an officer or officers to begin sorting to check for undersize and the tolerance for undersize. We will have multiple officers at this site, so if that officer's sorting that bag, then another one can take the next harvester in line to basically keep the process flowing. But once those oysters are checked, if it is found that there is a violation, then a decision will be made on what type of enforcement action to be taken. The small oysters will be retained by us so that they can be returned to the water alive, as we've always done, and the legal size oysters would then be returned to the harvester. Okay, at that point in time, tags would be issued that we will provide the harvester saying that the oysters have been checked. And
Let
then
me
he
ask-
has the ability to transport them to a dealer and they can be purchased.
Let me ask you another question. So if you find the percentage of the oysters small, are you going to be issuing citations?
Sure, yes, ma'am, there is a tolerance, and I mean, we've done that. I've worked in this county my entire career, and we've issued citations for undersized oysters for 14 years I've been here. But yes, ma'am, this is one of the tools we have in our box to help us with the recovery of the bay. And this is something that we've identified. It's something that is in place. We've utilized it as a tool in the past, and we've had some positive outcomes in the past because of it. So, but yes, ma'am, Ms. Cheryl, like I said to begin with, though, I'm very optimistic that we're going to see some very pretty oysters that'll be coming in. So hopefully we won't have a cause to have to issue
Hopefully
any
not, because
paper.
some of those tickets can range up to over $1,000. If they got over 57%, small oysters, it can range up to almost $1,000, $800 and something dollars. That's a lot of money.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
Having just 57%. But, and on the oysters, when they put the oysters on the flat to size them out and everything, does the officer do that, or does
Yes, ma'am.
the oysterman do that?
No, ma'am. The oysterman will basically, he or she can stay in their vessel. We're going to identify
Okay.
a bag, and they can set it on the gunnel, but once it hits the gunnel of their boat, we will take it at that point in time. Our non-sworn person will probably take it up to the table, dump it, and then it will be looked at by the officer. The officer will then be looking at it.
And then the officer that dumps the bag will put the oysters back in the bag?
Sure, yes, ma'am. It'll be handled, once that bag hits the gunnel, they won't have to touch it until we bring it back to them.
And,
at the
and
house.
Charlie, one more question, Mr. Chairman, then I'll be through. Are officers allowed, when that boat hits the shore, gets up on the trailer to be carried out, are officers allowed on those vessels?
Sure, we check undersized oysters on the waters of the state or at a landing site, and that's basically where we check for undersize. That's
But are
typically how we.
officers-
Sure,
Yeah, but
yes,
are
ma'am.
officers allowed on the boats?
Oh, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Now, I'm gonna ask you if I can board your boat.
But if they say no?
But if they say no, I mean, I don't know why they would tell me no.
I'm just asking.
But yes, I mean, when we work on the oyster bar, Miss Cheryl, that when I pull up to a boat, they say, "Hey, Charlie, how's things going?" And we talk about Little League games and we talk
Sorry,
about
guys,
church
I
and
gotta
everything
give you
else, and we do our business, so to speak, there. So it's usually pretty cordial.
Well, and I've got this to say. I know back in the 80s, 85, when we had Elena and Kate come through and practically did destroy the bay, the check stations was instrumental in helping bring the bay back. And we have been saying for months, I know Commissioner Parrish has been very vocal about getting check stations back.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm glad to see that y'all are going to try to work at that and try to help the various things. I just hope, and my prayers are, that this bay rebounds faster than what people think it's going to be, because I tell you what, it's like in the days of, well, I'm not going to go into that, but, it's like the dry bones, so, and it's sad. But we'll we'll persevere, but the people need to understand they're gonna have to work and get together and let's do something about it.
What percent tolerance you got now?
For unattached oysters, it's 5%.
5%?
5%. They're allowed up to 5% undersized. Yes, sir.
That's a good. Well, I worked back in '85, it worked good, and it'll work now. Should have been there.
Anybody else have any more questions?
I just want Charlie and Mr. Jim to know that the questions I ask are the questions that's asked to me, so that's the reason why I ask the questions to where people will know the answers, and I will know the answers, since I do not make my living on that bay. But I protect it every way I can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Mr. Kurt Blair, TDC report.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you today? We have provided you our report. I really only have one action item for you this morning. You've got the collections report. We're in and at around 6% average for so far increase over last year so far this year. We conducted our second hospitality training program last week. We had 18 participants from a variety of sources, lodging companies. We had some people from the city of Carabel, and that went very well. We're hopeful to do another one in February, as been suggested by some of the commissioners. We have a board appointment that is up this year. Rex Pennycuff from East Point was appointed a couple of years ago to fill an unexpired term, and the board had recommends to you that you appoint him for a full term this year. His term is up in October, along with the end of the fiscal year. So we'd ask that you consider reappointing Rex. And we will be meeting with Camp Gordon Johnson on our workshop with them tomorrow. This has to do with the proposal to fund them for the construction of their new building in Carabel Beach. So it's going to be the first workshop that our board will have with Camp Gordon Johnson to fully understand the depth of their proposal and what the money will be used for and the like. You're going to see in the next couple of months, we're going to be increasing our exposure in Tallahassee. And you'll be seeing that in specifically with Tallahassee Magazine and then some radio. We're doing this all as a means of both tracking. The big thing with us this year is trying to track the outcome of the funds that we invest in promotion. And so we're doing a pilot with Tallahassee Magazine where we'll be able to do that. And we're optimistic about it. I'll be bringing to you, because we're bringing to the committee tomorrow, a pilot marketing program that is designed to focus on the midweek vacancies. We've had that discussion before, and I know that you've expressed some concern from time to time that, we're working on the off-season and we continue to promote the off-season. But one of the uniquenesses of even the off-season is that weekends are pretty busy here. And the midweeks are pretty slow, and so we're going to develop a marketing package that we're going to work with lodging companies and nonprofits to try to focus in on that midweek market to see if we can increase the occupancy during those periods. And then our committee meetings tomorrow. You've got the agenda for from our last board meeting and the minutes from the last board meeting. Our next board meeting will be November 4th. And as I say, the only action item is that we would recommend that you reappoint Rex Pennycuff to his position on the TDC board.
Need to get a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Y'all have any questions, or?
Anybody have any
One
questions?
question. I understand that the return visitors to Franklin County have a high percentage. What's that percentage, and how do we compare with other places about return visitors?
Well, it's pretty high compared to other areas. We estimate that about 60% of the visitors that we get here, and mostly on the island and in Appalachia, are return visitors of some sort. And that drives a lot of where we focus some of our dollars. Now, I'll tell you that in the last 7 years, our revenues have increased, and therefore then the tourist industry has increased. We've almost doubled our revenues since we first started collecting the tourist tax. We're going through a period of reevaluation this year. We do know that a large portion of the visitors that come here are repeat visitors, and so we've taken some steps to appeal to them and encourage them to return. And one of the things we've done recently is initiated something with Coastline Magazine, where every lodging facility in the county has enough coastlines with a pull-out map that we provide them to go into each room, that each visitor gets to have one, and that's geared towards trying to encourage their looking ahead at future visits. We're also doing some things we'll be doing more things with the restaurants and the lodging companies to try to reinforce that message. But
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, sir.
thank you.
APCON, the airport.
Mr. Lee Lewis with AFCON is here to make a presentation. The presentation is going to be to give you an update on the different construction projects going on at the airport. And Jason Puckett, also airport manager.
Good morning, Chairman
Good morning.
Massey and fellow commissioners. Lee Lewis with AFCON. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, a privilege to serve Franklin County, certainly a privilege to have this opportunity this morning. I want to introduce real quick Beth Kirkland with BRPH, who's a member of our team, and I'll introduce her a little bit more here shortly, and Jason Puckett, most of you know, as the airport manager. I do have some handouts if you need one. I understand that you do have on your PowerPoint, you have an outline that we provided, as well as an exhibit. If you need some handouts, let us know if we can provide some of those. What I want to do today is just talk to you a little bit about where we've been at the airport, some things we're doing today, how we responded in our new selection, our recent selection and contract renewal to serve the airport, some things for the county to look forward to, some exciting developments going on, and things that we need to look out for, and one very simple request at the end. And I'll start by just reminding you that we were selected back in 2008 as your airport consultant for Appalachia Regional Airport, and it was a tough time right about 2008. As you can see on the chart that's on your handout there, that's a chart that we showed that just showed aircraft, general aviation aircraft shipments, and you can see the bottom fell out of the general aviation industry in 2008 and 2009, and it was certainly a precipitous downturn in the economy at that point as well. One of the things that I wanted to just remind you is that the FAA, when they do planning for airports, they've identified what are the primary factors affecting activity at an airport. And the few things they point out, the 5 main factors they point out, are what's happening in the local economies, with industry, what's happening with the local population and discretionary income levels, geographic attributes around the airport drive people to the airport. We obviously have the beautiful beaches and the seafood here to offer, but fuel prices have an impact, and those have gotten better recently, and the general climate for aviation across the country. Those are the primary factors. And I went back and did some research to show that from 2002 to 2013, the FAA puts out a forecast and their history of what's happening. From 2002 to 2013, hours flown in general aviation aircraft were at a high in 2004. They steadily went down, those hours went down and bottomed out at 2013. We're starting to see a little bit of a rebound these days, which is a good sign. This is industry-wide, so we think there's reason to be optimistic. As you can see in the chart, the aircraft shipments in the blue bars are starting to come back, and we're seeing the biggest growth is coming back in the higher-end airplanes, the business-type sophisticated aircraft. So some new reason to be excited there. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we've done. Obviously, with our challenges trying to grow activity at the airport, we've we have had a focus on one of the things, as you're aware, this airport has infrastructure, the pavement, the stormwater facilities that date back decades, many decades. And so we've used that opportunity in recent years to go ahead and complete a number of projects. And you've got an exhibit in front of you, but I just want to point out that both of your west apron, your east apron, we've done some major pavement repairs, get those back in working order. That goes along with the drainage. When we went out there early on, there were holes under the pavement you could park your car in. They were just caverns. And so those have been restored. We've updated and repaired that drainage. We spent an effort, some time and effort to rehab your main runway, runway 1432. And we fixed the concrete and started resealing the joints. And there's still some work to do on that one. It was just a funding issue. But we're going to pick up on that here shortly. The other big development was the corporate hangar. About a 12,000 square foot corporate hangar out there. Obviously, it's been underutilized to some extent, but that corporate hangar is an investment that the DOT has helped the county make in the airport as a way to get things moving. And I'll tell you, we'll talk a little bit about this, but the corporate hangar, having space available gets us in the game. If we don't have some space available, it's hard for people to look at the airport. No developer wants to wait 18 months or a businessman wants to wait 18 months for a facility to come open. So I think that is going to be attractive to industry as things grow. Some things that we're working on now, there's a few good projects that we're doing. One is we've got federal money, FAA money and DOT funds to continue rehabbing airfield pavements. And we had the FDOT's former airport expert, pavement expert work with us, and we went through and prioritized the best way to spend that money, so we're getting the best bang for our dollars in terms of how we're prioritizing the funds for the airport. And so that project is set to kick off in the first part of November, just in a few weeks here. The airfield lighting improvements is a project that we're about the 90% design level. That project will take your entire lighting systems on the airfield, which is right now is a direct cable in the dirt. It's direct buried cable and incandescent lighting. We're going to replace it with a full LED system that will have the cables buried in conduit this time. So it's going to ease your maintenance concerns and costs. It's going to protect the cables from ants and things that destroy those cables. And so hopefully, and the LED lighting will drastically reduce your operating costs for those lights. Lastly is a big project, 2 TRIP grants that the DOT awarded the county. Infrastructure development and stormwater, and we've highlighted here in red the idea of putting investing in some infrastructure development here to make this attractive for people. So if they do want to come in and invest in the airport, they have a place that's got the utility, the infrastructure system available to them, and try to make this as shovel-ready as possible. Along with that, a new access road that gives direct access to that space, but also provides a secondary benefit of providing access to your hangar tenants so they don't have to drive out into the airfield, which is obviously could create a safety concern at times. So that's just a little update of where we are. It's some exciting times.
Let me just say one more
Yes,
thing
sir.
about the airport, really for the benefit of Commissioner Watson. This airport was built by the U.S. government to facilitate World War II planning and practicing, and it was given to the county. The airport has been evaluated by FDOT and maybe the FAA, recognizing what its potential is. Right now, they say the 2 runways are all we need, in the foreseeable future. There's a 3rd runway. That's one reason I colored in here. Right now, that 3rd runway is not eligible for FDOT funding because they say it's in excess of the capacity that they forecast, in the foreseeable future. So it's going to be a challenge over time. Right now, the runway is open, but we can't get any matching money to make any improvements on it. And there will be an issue, and we don't know when, but at some point, this runway will have problems, and we'll have to address them, whether we continue to keep it open using our money, or whether we somehow get the money out of DOT, or whether in fact we close that runway. So I just want to point out there is a 3rd runway there, but its future is not as certain as yet.
And we worked at a similar airport that had the similar situation, and what we ended up doing there, and this is something we want to look at long-term as well, there were some challenges with this area, but one thing we could do is look at converting that perhaps into a taxiway that would open this up to some development in the future. Thanks, Alan. What I want to do now is just, first of all, thank the county for reselecting Avcon in the recent go-around. We saw that when the ad came out in the summer. We were anxious to reconvene our team, and we made some improvements, which I want to talk about. But we've got, our team consists of Avcon, Preble Rish, Nova, Geotechnical Engineers, and BRPH. We've been a proven team. We've been accountable to the county. I think that's been well documented. We bring incredible pavement, stormwater, airfield lighting, and navigational aid expertise, and we've served this airport well over the years. What we did, obviously, over the past couple of years, we've heard, there's been a big push to figure out how to generate activity at the airport, and we've heard that concern. We've listened. I have a number of letters that I can hand out when I'm done here that show that we have gone out into the market and talked about marketed the airport. A lot of these companies write that they're trying to stay alive, much less expand at this point, but they're well aware of what's going on at the airport and the facilities and the opportunity you provide here. But we did listen. This year, when we put our team together, we strategically looked at this and said, how could we improve our team over everything we've been doing? And the one thing that we said, what we wanted to do was find an economic development angle this time. So it was certainly an easy decision for us to bring on BRPH, represented today by Beth Kirkland. I want to just introduce her and just tell you that Beth has served as the former director for the Tallahassee-Leon County Economic Development Authority, where she's worked on a number of airport-related economic development projects. She's served as the past chair and board member for Florida's Economic Development Council statewide. She's been on the Enterprise Florida Board, and she's currently on the board for the Florida's Great Northwest. Did I miss any? So certainly she's got the expertise to help us develop some strategies to help market the airport. So that's one of the things we think we're going to do this time around is develop. We've got infrastructure improvements that we've worked on while this downturn has happened, and we think we're in a good spot to market this airport with some of these infrastructure improvements now. And I want to jump into our optimistic outlook. I want to tell you that there's a lot of exciting things to look forward to, and I want to enumerate some of those. Number one, we're seeing a cautious economic rebound. It's a steady, but it's cautious, I think is a good word. And I think that again, that's one driver. Just the economy itself is a big driver of activity on airports across the country. Was at the AAC meeting the other night, a few weeks back, and it was reported that the T-hangar occupancy at the airport is 100% now, and that's the first time that's happened in recent memory. In fact, I don't think it's been that way since we've been working at the airport in 2008. And they have a waiting list as well, so obviously a good sign. I mentioned before the corporate hangar and other infrastructure improvements. I tell you that we've been around doing airport work for a long time. If you have hangar space available, you're in the game. People will certainly take notice and look at you as a potential place to invest their business dollars. And we hear it all the time. It's not so much the process when they're looking at coming into the airport. How fast can I get set up is one of the first things that they want to know. So we think we're in a good spot there. I want to share with you that the FDOT and the FAA are showing incredible support for Franklin County, particularly the DOT out of Chipley. They have bent over backwards to try to find ways to help to make things work and to provide funding. The two CHIP grants we have here are significant, over $3 million combined for the infrastructure improvements and the stormwater improvements for the airport. And again, a lot of that is to not only develop economic activity at the airport, but to repair some of these 70-year-old stormwater systems that are failing in the airfield. So